Welcome, everyone, and I am really pleased to have Allison Hill on my Spotlight on HR spot today. Allison, I know you're a really busy lady. You are the MD and founder of Jigsaw People Solutions, and the reason I've been desperate to get you on this is, as some of the network will know, I featured Ewan McNair not that long ago, talking generally about talent acquisition, and I had the same conversation with him. You could literally talk about it all day, but Ewan gave a really good overview of how talent acquisition has evolved and what we need to be aware of as talent acquisition experts. And there were definitely a couple of themes that he touched on that I thought, I know exactly the person I want to speak to dig deeper on this. So hence the reason I have been stalking you for the past few months. So you're right, Allison, I know you're busy, but I need to speak to you. So thank you, first and foremost, for coming on the Spotlight series. There's probably a couple of things that I want to touch on today. So the first one being that whole candidate journey and how that impacts the brand. Now, whether that be a positive impact or a negative impact. So how did that whole journey impact the brand organisation? And then the second thing I want to go on to is something unfortunate that I've been hearing a lot of recently is that whole ghosting, ghosting candidates, whether that be from recruitment agencies or whether that be from actual, direct client organizations. So starting with that idea of candidates as the consumers, I guess, of your brand, how crucial is it, do you feel, to protect that relationship right from the very beginning? So we are talking with, starting from the initial job advert.
Yeah, so thank you first of all for having me. You're right, the past couple of months have been trying to get the diaries aligned, and this is how now, so great. And this is some of the two topics amongst many, as you know, Katie, talk with other people, including you, in that I'm equally passionate about, because again, the world of talent acquisition evolves all the time, and it's keeping on top of it. That's the problem, isn't it? Sometimes it gets too much, and sometimes you go back to what you think has always worked. So with regards to that whole consumer piece, and I think I maybe come at this consumer piece from my days in Heineken, if I could say that.
Yeah, of course.
Because obviously it taught me a lot about consumer brand, the market, the attraction, and also a little bit about each demographic is looking for something different. So it's really, really important. And I think when you damage the brand with a candidate, you might never realize the impact that has on a product. And I know that sounds silly, but if you think about, a great lover of Heineken beer, or you love Cadbury's Dairy Milk or whatever, if you have a really bad experience with that brand, then almost you're super disappointed. And the creation at the very beginning of setting the scene around the brand starts very much with the job advert in my books. That's my opinion, because it's about, you're going to market to sell the opportunity, just like you sell a tin of soup. You've got to say what it is and why you buy it. But equally, it's about making sure that the candidates have that expectation of your organisation at the very beginning. I think also it's important to show the value of a company-wide organisation with regards to its values and its culture. Super important to people, to candidates specifically. The professionalism that comes across. That candidate journey, everyone can say their journey's the best, but actually we can't really dictate that. That is down to that individual candidate, because what's good for you might not be good for me. So it's very subjective in that moment, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So I think it's about making sure that you're looking at the part that everyone plays in that journey, from the recruiter to the hiring manager. And again, the market has changed. I mean, even I worked in the States, as you know, for a couple of years, and that's a very different game altogether. But also it's the power of the brand with managers when they're interviewing. And although managers are there to interview and they have their list of questions, they want to do a cultural fit, you can absolutely guarantee that that candidate, if it's you and me, in their head very quietly, are interviewing the other way, back the way, to make sure it isn't what they want to join. And I think that's the key pieces of it, is that never underestimate the power of that candidate just because we have a vacancy to fill.
Totally. And that's a really interesting point, Alison, because we often say that to our kind of candidates going through a journey, to say, look, it's a two-way process. It's as important for you to come away from that meeting with your internal questions answered as it is for those hiring managers to kind of get that information from you. So that's a really valid point. So thank you. And I guess, moving on to the interaction between recruiters like, myself, like yourself, and candidates, how can recruiters make candidates feel like they are always treated as number one? Because it's hard. You and I both know you put an advert out now, or if you're doing a client campaign, you can literally get hundreds of responses. So how do you manage that? How do you make sure that interaction is kept where you want it to be, which is right at the top of your agenda?
Yeah, and it's a difficult one. So I mean, I think I said this before, you know, I come at these things because I did start in an agency world many, many moons ago, and
Yes,
then obviously
5 years ago, Alison, as I said, 5 years ago.
I wish. But certainly, I think, you know, if you're looking for a job as a candidate, okay, you're going to put your heart and soul into that job. It might be your ideal job, a job you never thought you could achieve. So you put every effort into it, don't you? And recruiters equally, we work with people and it's about human interaction. People buy into people and very quickly will go, I would love to work with that person. I'm not sure about that person.
Yeah.
So again, it's judgmental. But I think from a recruiter point of view is when they're super busy, it's also about even the smallest little piece of communication you can give to a candidate is really crucial. It might not seem anything to us, but to them in that other side, it's really, really important. And it's about, you know, that small piece of and golden nugget of information is absolutely what is keeping that open communication with candidates in a timely manner where possible. And also making sure that, you know, I always say, treat people the way you want to be treated yourself. So
Yeah.
if you want to put as much effort into it, then they want that in the way back. And people just want to feel as if they're being heard and they belong in a process. Recruiters equally work super hard, as you and I know, have challenges every day that are different challenges. They have to multitask. And candidates are really what they are working to achieve an ultimate goal for both parties.
Totally.
I think in an in-house world of recruiter, from that perspective, as the business has obviously got a strategic need to fill, everyone has that, which creates revenue. But equally in an agency, again, as you and I know, is that an agency environment, you're running a business, you're generating revenue, you want to protect your staff. So you can only do that by obviously having your jobs from the business and also having your candidates to place in that. So it's almost like you're wanting to give them that creme de la creme service where you can. But if you can't, then just have some small element of communication is keeping it open. Or you're then thinking about, do you have an administrator that equally could step in and be that conduit in the middle to keeping things flowing along, which they equally enjoy doing.
Absolutely. And actually that whole, I know we were talking about kind of the candidate journey before this, that is so relevant to that piece. You know, I'm always say to the guys in the team, no news is news. And I know, you know, it doesn't always seem that big a deal, but actually just being told we don't know is something, and don't lose sight of how important that can be. But also I think that journey with an agency partner to know that they're fighting your corner, they're trying to help, because the power of referrals, recommendations, if you don't treat somebody right, it's again, it damages your brand. So, you know, I totally resonate with that, Alison.
I think the other thing, Katie, as well, is that when you go through a preferred supplier process with any organisation, you do it. I've been in the other side of doing it and actually looking for, and I always use the word partners. I don't like the word term supplier because I think, you know, partnering is exactly what you want to do. So I always see having an agency partner process as being a continuation of an internal recruitment team, because there's a time and a place when you need an agency, right? Not all the time, granted.
No, absolutely
But
not.
equally, you go through that very robust process to make sure that you eat, sleep, and breathe the same values, same culture, same disciplines, same things that are important to you about candidates as they would be in an in-house model. So that's important. Not just someone that gives you the best rate, 10% for this or 12% for that, because it doesn't mean to say that they're not doing a good job, but equally there's other people that actually want to do and go above and beyond a little bit more for their customers equally.
Absolutely. And listen, when it comes to, listen, we're all grown-ups. There will come a point when you have to give somebody bad news. You know, it's, so when it comes to the disappointments in the hiring process, you know, that candidate doesn't receive the offer, you know, how can recruiters, I guess, handle these situations while still maintaining that positive relationship with the candidate?
I think it goes back to communication again, doesn't it? So not everyone is happy to give negative news, right? Because they might not be comfortable. But you also have to show a little bit of empathy and professionalism in these situations. So candidates are not unrealistic to understand that not every job opportunity is for them, right? And that is common sense approach if they look at it that way. But again, it's about respecting the transparency of what you get back out of that interview process. And we were just saying before we come on the call, not every hiring manager thinks they have time to give feedback. But actually, it's the job of the recruiter to explain why that feedback is so critical in order to help develop that person. Because that's what it is. It's about giving them their areas of development. And even the customer I'm working with just now, McPhee, I'm writing documentation for them to help their managers around the fact that 3 positive pieces of information out that interview are amazing. Equally, 3 opportunities for development are equally valuable to that candidate. So I think it's about making sure that you're able to be honest in the conversation, be able to give them some guiding direction, which again, the recruiter won't know because they've not maybe interviewed them as thoroughly as a hiring manager has. And that's the part that managers play. And sometimes I don't think they realise how important a part they play. And that's equally for recruiters and organisations to break down that mould. And again, I always flip it on managers. So I would say, you know, if you went for this interview today and you didn't get it, would you be happy that you didn't get feedback? No, because you put all your hard work and soul and effort into it, and you want to get something back in order to say, right, I didn't get it this time. What do I need to do for next time? And that's a development. You know, so it's anything in life, right? Baking a cake, if you don't have the right recipe to bake the cake's not going to come out the oven the way you want it to be.
Exactly.
Think of what you put into it.
Always love an analogy about a cake, Alison, liking that.
On a Friday morning.
Absolutely. But you know what else I really love about that? And that's it, you know, I might steal that. See that whole piece you talked about, because see a lot of the feedback we get from hiring managers, we're too busy to give detailed feedback. And I get that because they may have had, you know, they might be working with a number of candidates. They don't have time to go into each individual one. However, if we push back and say, well, do you know what? Give us a couple of positives and 1 or 2 areas of development, that does not take a lot of time. So I like that. That's a really good point. So moving on again, talking about the communication skills, how crucial is effective communication and shaping that overall candidate experience, you know, both from the recruiter perspective and the candidate? Because it is a big process, let's be honest. It's not just one-sided.
No, absolutely not. And again, you know, communication is key, isn't it? It's what we do every single day. It's what we're taught when we go to school, is how to communicate from your parents from that early years. Is standard, it's what we do, but sometimes we forget to do it properly. I think that's the thing. So from a recruiter point of view, at the initial outreach to final decision, it's very much that interaction shapes the candidate's perception of the individual and the organisation, doesn't it? And that's a lasting moment when they get it wrong. So, and I think candidates deserve to feel that they are that priority, because that's what they want to be. They receive timely updates, or if they don't, there's a reason why. So again, communication, even if it's the smallest thing, as I said earlier. And in the world of digital that we're in today, everything keeps changing rapidly. You know, there's social media, there's emails, there's phone calls. How often do you do that to give feedback? Probably not all the time. But it's about protecting the candidate experience in a more important way than actually dropping the text message. Now, some people might love that. There's certain generations that absolutely do love that. And also there's tons of people that get tons of emails every day that they think is spam and never look at it. So you have to find the fine line of what works for each person. And again, I always say you have to understand the behaviours of that individual to know what's going to work for them, and you have to adapt. And that's not an easy thing to do. And I seen an article yesterday on LinkedIn talking about applicant tracking systems and the way forward. Because again, it is evolving so much. And when you build out an applicant tracking system, it's set in stone. Maybe it's a little bit of flex. But again, the demographic that you're working with, someone at 21 was probably looking for a text message, not on their emails all the time. You and I might absolutely be on our emails all the time. It's the purpose of what we do. So you have to understand the behaviours of that demographic and what works for them. And that's difficult to do in a business, but equally difficult for a recruiter, because they've got many things to do. That's the problem.
And you know what, that, you know, Paul at McPhee will relate to all this, but it also taps into that whole neurodiversity piece. You know, people like to communicate in different ways.
Absolutely.
And it's about having that emotional intelligence to recognise that as a recruiter. So yeah, really, really valid points there, Alison. Thank you.